let's start with you with try to define what is a research advocate.
To me, a research advocate is somebody who wants to bring the patient voice or the patient perspective to the research process. And so it's not at the end when people are looking for accruals to clinical trials only. It's at the beginning when they're designing their research to understand what are questions important to patients, what are patients willing to do and able to do, and what types of patients are those? You know, are those patients that live very close to a cancer center? Are those patients who are in rural America? And then the conduct of the research that's done ethically. And of course that the dissemination of the results gets out into the community. So we have access to those new treatments.
Let's talk for a minute about the evolution of advocacy, all right? So breast cancer, you know, we can recall AIDS activists, breast cancer activists, but really the breast cancer community were the pioneers in advocacy. My memory, since I've been doing my work since the 80s, is that advocacy began with trying to raise awareness, and even reaching out to support people was considered a form of advocacy. But take us through the evolution of how advocacy finally reached the area of research.
I can do a personal story. I was diagnosed. That's the way many of us as advocates start. And so then when I was finished with treatment, I looked at my doctor and I said, what can I do for other women? And he said, you can join YME and tell them all to get mammograms. I was like, okay, I can do that. So I did join YME, and I became what they call a peer counselor. So I talked to other women who were facing a diagnosis, and I had been one of the first lumpectomy patients in Chicago. So I talked to a lot of women about trying to make a decision between a mastectomy and a lumpectomy. And I tried to listen to what they wanted versus telling my story. And so after that, I thought, you know what? I'm talking to these women about the same thing year after year. We need to change that. So my idea of changing it is we were going to get more money for cancer research. You know, so it was the political advocacy. And I got very involved with the National Breast Cancer Coalition. I was on their board for a while. And I believed in what they were doing, and I still believe in what they're doing. We do have to make politicians aware of what the issues are from the patient perspective. But after a number of years, I found out I was still doing the same thing, and oh, by the way, the treatments hadn't changed. So then I thought about it, and I thought, well, how can the treatments change? Well, it's by research. So then I thought I had this bright idea. I would get involved with the researchers, and that would change it. So that was my story of how I got to research advocacy, and do believe it is an answer.
How do you become a research advocate, and obviously why?
Well, and my path was a little bit different. I came to understand what power it is between putting a researcher and a survivor together during my work with the Susan G. Komen organization when I ran their grant program. So here I was, an advocate running a huge scientific program, which I think brought a different perspective to that program. But also, when we had events that a survivor and a researcher could actually talk. So here the researcher is meeting who is actually raising funds for their grants and will benefit from their research. And then the survivor gets to talk to a scientist, a real live scientist that's working on finding the cure. And so, and they both go away changed. So the scientist goes back to the lab or to the clinic, and they're changed. They put a face to the disease. The survivor, the science has become real, you know, and that even renews the hope that's in research. So I took that from the time that I left Komen in 2001 and brought it to Research Advocacy Network.
Ginny, you have a story that really led you from wanting to just raise awareness, and in your disease type, it's not only rare, but so not understood.
Right.
Talk to us about your journey.
My path in some respects is similar, because I think once you finish treatment, many of us want to do something to give back, as you experienced too. And our first thing usually is in a community setting where you begin to be willing to talk about your disease and your experience, and like Mary Lou said, talk to other survivors, and you help them and people who are going through it. But for many of us, we feel like that's not quite enough, and you try to find other places you can get involved, and I kept finding closed doors and was really frustrated until I found about the Inflammatory Breast Cancer Research Foundation was starting, and I thought, someone else who's interested in research. But that was in '99, so it was a little later. But still, there were not a lot of advocates involved in that aspect of advocacy. And so we sometimes have to say there are different levels. Not everyone wants to do this type of advocacy work, and that's fine, it's good. But you have to find where your niche is. And I'm a nurse by profession, and so for me, I wanted in the science piece. But sometimes it's a challenge to be taken seriously in that arena. And I think for all of us, it's become an uphill battle. And there are some who are not going to work with us. But you really just develop incredible relationships with the people who want to allow us to be a part of the process.
And so thanks to all of you, and in particular to Ginny Mason, to Mary Lou Smith, and to Elda Railey for coming together and giving us this opportunity, and including me as a research advocate.
Absolutely.